Welcome to Space Nexus. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. Tonight, America stands at a crossroads, facing a historic clash that will test the very foundations of our democracy. The tension is palpable as the nation holds its breath, watching a dramatic confrontation unfold between presidential power and the rule of law, a principle that has guided the country for centuries. The stakes have never felt higher, as the delicate balance between branches of government is put to the ultimate test. In a decision that will echo through history, the Supreme Court has issued a landmark ruling, directly challenging President Trump's aggressive tariff strategy and questioning the limits of executive authority. But rather than bringing clarity or closure, the decision has unleashed a fresh wave of uncertainty. Markets have been rattled, with investors scrambling to make sense of the new reality. Households across the country are left wondering what this means for their financial security and future. President Trump's use of sweeping tariffs, justified by broad and often controversial legal authorities, has now collided head-on with the highest court in the land. The legal and political ramifications are enormous, with both sides digging in for a prolonged battle. The White House, undeterred by the court's rebuke, has vowed to escalate the tariff war even further, signaling a willingness to defy the court's opinion and double down on its strategy. For ordinary Americans, the stakes are painfully real. Prices at the grocery store continue to climb, jobs in key industries hang in the balance, and the overall stability of the economy is now at risk. Every household feels the ripple effects of this high-stakes standoff. The central question looms larger than ever. Can a president truly defy a Supreme Court ruling on an issue of such national importance? Legal scholars and political leaders are locked in heated debate, with no easy answers in sight. The answer to this question will not only shape the outcome of this crisis, but will also define the limits of executive power for generations to come, setting a precedent that could alter the course of American history. As the nation watches with anxious anticipation, the outcome remains deeply uncertain. The eyes of the world are on America, waiting to see how this unprecedented confrontation will be resolved. To truly understand the economic turmoil we're witnessing today, we need to revisit the foundation of President Trump's economic strategy, his aggressive use of tariffs as a central weapon. These tariffs weren't just policy tools, they became symbols of a new era in American trade, reshaping the global economic landscape and redefining how the U.S. interacted with its trading partners. Trump revived decades-old trade laws, interpreting them with unprecedented breadth. Section 301 was wielded to confront China's trade practices, while Section 232 was used to justify tariffs on steel and aluminum imports, even from close allies. These moves sent shockwaves through international markets and signaled a dramatic shift in U.S. trade policy. Perhaps the administration's most controversial maneuver was invoking the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This rarely used law allowed the White House to impose sweeping global tariffs, bypassing traditional congressional oversight and expanding executive authority in ways few had anticipated. By combining these legal tools, the Trump White House constructed a complex and far-reaching tariff regime. This system was carefully designed to withstand legal scrutiny, anticipating challenges from both domestic and international critics. What began as a series of targeted tariffs soon escalated into a near-universal tax on imports, affecting a vast array of goods and industries. The ripple effects were felt by businesses, consumers, and governments around the world. The 2025 Liberation Day tariffs marked a dramatic expansion of this approach, signaling the administration's unwavering commitment to its hardline trade doctrine. These new measures intensified global tensions and further entrenched the U.S. in a high-stakes economic standoff. This aggressive and unyielding strategy set the stage for a historic constitutional showdown, raising fundamental questions about the separation of powers and the limits of executive authority in economic policy. Now, the executive branch finds itself in direct conflict with the judiciary, as courts are called upon to determine the legality and scope of these sweeping actions. The result is a moment of profound institutional tension, with the future of American economic policy and the balance of power between branches of government hanging in the balance. The Supreme Court battle was sparked by the administration's use of IEPA to justify broad tariffs. Business groups argued this was an abuse of executive power, violating Congress's authority over trade. In August 2025, a federal court ruled the tariffs illegal, finding the administration had overstepped its bounds. The White House appealed, and the Supreme Court agreed to hear the case, recognizing its national significance. Even before arguments began, the administration prepared to shift its legal basis from IEPA to Section 232, hoping to shield tariffs from judicial review. This maneuver signaled the White House's intent to continue the fight, regardless of the court's decision. The stage was set for a high-stakes confrontation over presidential power. The nation braced for a ruling that could redefine the limits of executive authority. On October 1, 2025, the Supreme Court struck down tariffs imposed under IEPA, ruling the administration had exceeded its authority. The court reaffirmed that only Congress can levy taxes and regulate commerce, drawing a clear line on executive power. However, the decision was narrow, leaving tariffs under Section 232, based on national security, untouched. This distinction allowed the White House to continue its trade war using different legal tools. The ruling triggered legal and political chaos, with businesses hoping for relief but finding little certainty. The White House's swift, defiant response made clear the conflict was far from over. A new, more intense phase of the power struggle had begun. The White House responded to the Supreme Court with open defiance, treating the ruling not as a final word, but as a hurdle to be bypassed. The administration's stance was clear. Legal setbacks would not slow their momentum, and the machinery of government would find new ways to press forward. Within hours, officials announced sweeping new tariffs under Section 232, targeting a wide range of goods, lumber, furniture, and more. The move was both a signal and a strategy, showing that the administration was prepared to use every tool at its disposal to reshape America's trade landscape. Tariffs on furniture are set to escalate dramatically, threatening to upend entire supply chains. Meanwhile, new investigations threaten to expand tariffs to semiconductors, pharmaceuticals, and other critical industries, raising concerns among business leaders and international partners alike. If these measures go forward, over a third of all U.S. imports could soon be taxed, escalating the trade war to unprecedented levels. The ripple effects would be felt not just in boardrooms and factories, but in households across the country. President Trump has floated even broader tariffs, including on all foreign-made furniture and even international films. These proposals have sparked fierce debate, with supporters calling them necessary for national security, and critics warning of higher prices and strained global relations. Commerce Secretary Lutnick now holds sweeping authority to expand tariffs further, wielding powers that could reshape entire industries. The scope and speed of these changes have left many wondering how far the administration is willing to go. The message is unmistakable. If one legal tool is blocked, the administration will simply reach for another, regardless of the consequences. This relentless approach has upended traditional checks and balances, raising fundamental questions about the limits of executive power. This sets up a direct confrontation over the rule of law, pitting the executive branch against the judiciary in a high-stakes battle that could redefine the boundaries of American governance. The stakes for American democracy and the global economy have never been higher. As the world watches, the outcome of this struggle will shape not only the nation's future, but the global order for years to come. The expanding trade war is fueling inflation and economic instability. Tariffs raise the cost of imported goods, forcing businesses to either absorb losses or pass costs to consumers. With tariffs now covering essentials like lumber and electronics, families are feeling the squeeze. Businesses face crippling uncertainty, unable to plan as trade rules shift overnight. Job cuts are rising, especially in industries reliant on global supply chains. While some sectors gain, overall employment and growth suffer. The administration's defiance of the Supreme Court adds political risk, deterring investment. The result? A fragile economy, with confidence and prosperity at risk. America's trading partners are alarmed by the chaos in Washington. Allies like the EU, UK, and Japan remain wary, knowing their tariff exemptions could vanish at any moment. Countries already targeted, such as Switzerland and India, are considering retaliation, threatening U.S. exporters. The tit-for-tat cycle disrupts global supply chains and damages economic relationships. The administration's disregard for the Supreme Court undermines global confidence in the U.S. as a reliable partner. International investors may hesitate, fearing unpredictable policy shifts. America's go-it-alone strategy risks isolation and a loss of global influence. Legal scholars see this as a constitutional stress test, with Congress's authority over trade under siege. The Supreme Court tried to rein in executive overreach, but the administration's pivot to Section 232 keeps the conflict alive. Constant uncertainty acts as a tax on investment and innovation, harming U.S. competitiveness. Defying the Supreme Court could erode trust in America's legal system and weaken the dollar. Politically, the standoff deepens divisions and risks further paralysis in Washington. Future presidents may exploit these expanded powers, destabilizing the balance of power. Some in Congress may push to reclaim authority, but bipartisan cooperation is elusive. For now, economic policy is dictated by an unstoppable executive, leaving institutions and the economy in limbo. The long-term health of American democracy and prosperity hangs in the balance. This is more than a legal battle. It's a fight over the future of American democracy. The Supreme Court has tried to check executive power, but the administration's response has only escalated the conflict. The result? Higher prices, job uncertainty, and a fragile economy that affects every American. The question of whether a president can defy the Supreme Court will shape the nation for decades. Will Congress reclaim its constitutional role, or will power continue to shift to the White House? The outcome will determine the future of our government, economy, and global standing. The stakes are immense, and the story is far from over.